Hey, welcome back. Okay, so on today's episode, I want to explore with you two popular objections or misbeliefs that I hear when people are exploring coaching concepts. And there are certainly much more than two, but these are the most common ones I have heard. So I'm just going to list them out and then we'll dive into each one. But the first is this common belief that I see over and over where people think that if we're too kind to ourselves, then all of a sudden we're going to lose motivation to be excellent or lose motivation to do the right thing. The second one is when we're talking about people's experiences and their results being created by their thoughts, their feelings. It's like people feel that it's almost mean or callous to believe that other people's thoughts and feelings and their results is somehow, they're liberated from them, that only the other person is responsible for them. That's not my responsibility. That's so unkind. And that there's no space to be kind or compassionate or somehow participate in the other person's solution. So those are the two that I want to dive into. So the first one is, again, this belief on self-compassion, that it's going to make me soft or make me go easy on myself. And that somehow I need to be punished or be pushed. And so let's just dive into it. There's this common belief that so many people have that somehow if we're forgiving to ourselves, we're kind, we're compassionate, we're accepting of ourselves or the situation, that it gives permission for us to stop trying or to accept the things the way they are, to condone what's happening, and that it will create this sense of ease within us that's going to take away our drive to change it and the drive to do hard work. And I think there's a lot of layers to this to unpack because I don't think that we pick up this messaging from just one place. So the first thing we need to do is understand what self-compassion is and how it functions in our life. Dr. Kristen Neff is an expert in self-compassion, and she refers to it as the practice of treating oneself with kindness, understanding, and acceptance at all times. But we especially think of it in times of difficulty or failure, much like, we would treat a close friend. If a friend was having a hard time, we would be extra kind to them, right? And Dr. Neff describes three main components of self-compassion. So one is self-kindness, just being warm and understanding to yourself rather than being self-critical. That means actively soothing and comforting yourself in a time of distress. The second the second domain is common humanity, recognizing that suffering and personal inadequacy are part of the shared human experience. And this involves seeing one's experience, your experience, as part of the larger human condition, rather than feeling isolated or unique in your struggles. And the last domain is mindfulness. So holding painful thoughts and feelings in balanced awareness rather than over-identifying with them. So this could involve observing your thoughts and emotions without suppressing them or exaggerating them. And while we focus on all the bad ones, we also need to balance our perspective and focus on all of the ways that we are wonderful and not just terrible. And that's it. It's just that simple. But yet it's not simple at all, is it? Because we've added all these additional judgments and beliefs around it. So let me share some of them with you that I commonly encounter. But the first is that we confuse self-compassion with self-indulgence. People often mistake self-compassion for being lenient or self-indulgent, fearing that being kind to themselves will make them less disciplined, less motivated, they'll become lazy, they'll be less productive and less rigorous. And really that's related to the fear of losing control, the fear that if we are too comfortable, too satisfied with the status quo, then we'll lose that external drive to improve our world around us, to achieve our goals, and somehow we've kind of lost control over our action. Another one is cultural norms. Many cultures value hard work, discipline, and self-criticism as the pathway to success. And so self-compassion seems like it's counter to these values because it's softer. It's seemingly less rigorous. And this stems from the idea that self-criticism is necessary in maintaining high standards and control over one's actions. All of this is to say that we really misunderstand motivation. Self-criticism is more effective than self-compassion because being hard on oneself and punitive on oneself will push us to work harder. That's our belief anyways, right? This is really true for all us perfectionists out there who worry that if we're too kind to ourselves, like we're going to lose our edge, we're going to settle for mediocrity. So that's a lot. I hope that one or two or all of them resonated with you, because that means that this space is rich for curiosity and decomposing some of these things. All of the research in psychology says that self-compassion actually promotes more sustainable forms of motivation and productivity. So how can that be? The number one contributor is a willingness to feel fear and to fail. And remember, we learned in an earlier episode that your willingness to feel any emotion is your number one predictor, driver to be unstoppable, to have the life of your dreams, to expand your experience of life if you're just willing to feel anything. So let's take that concept of emotions and apply it to self-compassion versus self-criticism. The reason why you're self-critical is self-preservation, right? We just said this. You want to achieve the goal and you don't want to experience the pain of not achieving the goal. What does that mean about you or the situation or your life? And it makes sense that you want to do everything you can to control the situation, to ensure the outcome. And by beating yourself up, punishing yourself ahead of time, we don't actually get any closer to the goal. We just add additional pain and suffering and additional barriers now that we have to jump over. And we almost guarantee sometimes that we're going to fail because it was so miserable to get there. And then later we don't want to do it again. Or it means that we didn't make it miserable enough the first time. So we have to make it more and more miserable the second time until you run out of this vicious, painful cycle and ultimately give up. But it's a process full of self-judgment and fear and inadequacy and scarcity, and you're already suffering ahead of time before you even reach the goal. And then when you reach the goal, it's almost like relief just so you can get out of that whole process of self-judgment. So just play with me for a moment. What if we approach this very same goal with kindness to ourselves? It doesn't mean that we don't give up or settle. It doesn't mean that we're complacent. It doesn't mean we stop. It actually does the complete opposite. It allows us to process the hurt, the grief, the suffering, and to fill up our tank so that when we want to try again, we can self-source our own strength, our own energy. We can stay connected to our goal in a way that feels so good that we want it to be sustainable. We want to go at it for much longer, because the actual process is filled with love. It doesn't make it any less hard or scary, but at least we can process the fear of failure ahead of time. The way I look at it is that either path is uncomfortable. So the self-critical path is full of meanness and cruelty and pain, and you pay it up front. And you don't enjoy the process, and you don't encourage yourself to stay on the path. The self-compassionate way, you also have to pay the price up front. You have to be willing to embrace what it could feel like to be embarrassed or to fail. And you love yourself through it anyways. It goes back to life being 50-50. There's a huge difference in your relationship to yourself, to your past self, to your future self, who needs you to believe in them. And then when you get there, you can look back on your past self with so much gratitude, and you're willing to take on that transaction with yourself, that business with yourself, that job again, because you're willing to bet on you again. I don't want to work for a boss who makes me feel terrible. Like, no, thank you. I want to go find another job. But I want to work for a boss that makes me feel encouraged and appreciated and valued. So we can do that. We can fuel ourselves with that love, and it opens us up so much more to take risk and to be willing and to get out there and to be creative and to get to the goal even faster and better, because we fueled it with love instead of with self-criticism. So let's talk for a moment about the fear of failure. Self-compassion reduces our fear of failure and encourages us to take on new challenges without excessive anxiety. We have more resilience, meaning we can go out there and get what we want and bounce back from setbacks quickly. You can get back in the game so much faster, and it allows you to keep failing and failing and failing. And it's not a big deal. It's sustainable motivation because it's intrinsic, because it's internal, because it's filled with love and not shame. Actions are driven by genuine interest and joy instead of external pressure or fear of failure. And that's what the science shows, is that all of that leads to lower anxiety, depression, and stress. And it's a positive feedback loop that enhances productivity and focus. So I hope that you can ponder some of these things and really invite and ask the role of your perfectionist, self-critical person and just be curious on what is their impact on you. How does that maybe keep you from taking risks versus when you're kind and understanding with yourself, knowing that your experience is a part of everybody else's and humanity's? How does that open you up to taking more and more risks, no matter what the outcome is? And how, when you're able to take more and more risk, how does that influence the outcome? Okay, so on to the second misconception, which is the misbelief that others' thoughts are their problem, and somehow that's mean or callous. So this stems from misunderstandings about empathy and personal boundaries and emotional responsibility. This idea that when we're in coaching and we're talking about my experiences as mine and your experiences as yours, then somehow this belief that well, I'm not responsible for their experience, damn, that's mean, that's callous. No, I want to love them. I want to help them. I want to partner with them in their experience. And so I want to talk a little bit about empathy and boundaries and responsibility, because there's a difference between being empathetic for somebody and being responsible for somebody. Empathy is the ability to understand and recognize another person's emotional state, feeling what they're feeling, and responding with care and concern. But a lot of people conflate empathy with taking responsibility for other people's feelings. So while empathy involves understanding, it doesn't mean that we're responsible for those feelings. This belief that we have to fix somebody else's emotions just so I can show them that I care, that leads to blurred boundaries. Another one is cultural conditioning. Societal and cultural norms teach us that caring for others means taking on their burdens. And that can lead to the belief that if we don't take responsibility for other people's emotions, that we are unkind, that we are uncaring. Another one is fear of rejection or fear of conflict or fear of just being perceived as unkind, right? People worry that if they acknowledge that others are responsible for their own feelings, that they're going to be seen as insensitive or detached. And this fear of being judged or rejected can drive us to overextend emotional support. Similar with avoiding conflict, there's a belief that taking on others' emotional burdens are somehow going to keep the peace and maintain harmony in relationships. So when we talk about cognitive work, we learn that our thoughts, rather than the external events, or rather than, people's actions, our thoughts determine our feelings. And this perspective helps us understand that we are responsible. Each person is responsible for their emotional reactions. And when you do that, you allow for two beautiful gifts. The first beautiful gift is that you are allowing the person to be in full freedom, to be completely themselves without wanting them to change or needing to fix anything. And for you to feel, you detaching yourself from feeling better once they feel better. It separates the two. The other beautiful gift is that it allows you, yourself, to show up in a completely supportive, curious, open way, not taking on additional pain that you need to solve. Now, it doesn't mean you don't care about their problems. It doesn't mean you can't be kind or compassionate. But there is nothing that requires you to fix them or rescue them just to be in a role where you can support them, where you can empower them, where you can listen to them. And I can't think of a better gift for each one of you in that relationship, because it allows the person with the pain or the problem to develop their own coping strategies to heal what needs to be healed. And they don't have to rely on you or anyone else. And that is a gift they will have with themselves their whole life. And it allows for you to be in free, authentic expression of love and support and holding space for them. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't change. Of course, you can change if you want to change, but you change because you want to change. You don't change because you're trying to fix their problem or solve their problem or take on their problem. So, for example, if I have a colleague who doesn't like the way I explain something, they find me to be rude or offensive, I can understand that the words themselves are neutral and it's that person's thoughts about me, their feelings about me, or the environment that led them to choose to feel offended. And I could continue to behave in the same way if I wanted to, but I can also hold space with that person. And it allows me to explore, gosh, what is it about my words that made them interpret it that way? What is it, about how I was being? With so much more curiosity, because it's nothing I have to fix if I don't want to. I know that their experience is a reflection of their thoughts and feelings, and it doesn't have anything to do with who I am or what I said. But I want to be someone who's kind. I want to be someone who's flexible. I want to be someone who's supportive. So now, with more ease, with acceptance, with love and exploration, gosh, I can sit here and hold space for them and explore. Is there another way I can explain myself? Are there other words I can use? Is there another setting we can sit in? And knowing that this isn't like to fix that person's perception. It's not to rescue them from their pain. It's not to change what they're going through. I'm only doing it because I want to be someone who's adaptive, who listens, who is supportive, because ultimately, right, that's going to be my result. And yeah, it's going to influence them. And that's who I want to be because I want to be it for me, not because I'm trying to solve their problem for them. I can appreciate that my actions and my results are going to end up in their circumstance line, and that's going to influence their thoughts and feelings. I hope that makes sense. It's like I want to put myself in the most generous space possible so that whatever I say and how I do it and all of my actions are because I want to be a more kind, inclusive person. And I'm not, responsible for how they're seeing me, but I am invested in what they see and what they think and what they hear and what their experience is. And I'm invested in exploring how my actions end up in their circumstance line. And that's the only thing I can change anyways. I can't force them to see me any way different, but I can change my actions, reactions, how I am, so that I can have a better chance at influencing changing their circumstance line and giving them new thoughts to think and feelings to feel and allowing them to co-create that relationship with me. Not that it's only one person or another person's responsibility. So I hope that there's a little bit of space for understanding that others' thoughts and feelings are their responsibility, but that doesn't have to negate you to be compassionate or empathetic. Instead, it promotes a healthier relationship and a healthier emotional well-being because it fosters clear boundaries and personal accountability. And by practicing true compassion, we support each other. I support you in your emotional journey while I maintain my own, and we both have more fulfilling, sustainable connections. Okay, in our ending tradition, here are some questions to chew on. 1 or 2 about self-compassion. Where have you seen that it has opened you up to actually achieving and doing more versus self-criticism? Where have you seen in your life that that's shut you down from getting to where you want to go? And same with boundaries and empathy. Where can you play with clear boundaries, allowing full permission for the other person to be in their truth and hold space for that with so much more curiosity when you don't need to fix it or solve it? And then when you choose to, it's from a place of desire and joy and want, not because you have to, not because they're relying on you, but because you want to be a person that is empathetic and open and listening and caring, and that nothing has gone wrong. And we can each have some personal accountability while we each have some interest in this collective experience. Okay, I'm wishing you all play, possibility, and peace, wishing you to feel supported in this space. And I'm so honored to be a part of your soul tribe. I'm sending you love, and I'll see you next week.